There are troubling new allegations tonight about that deadly port explosion in Beirut.
Weather camera in Pennsylvania capturing the moment part of a chocolate factory exploded.
The dawn of the nuclear age began 78 years ago with a flash of a man-made sun rising over the New Mexico desert.
Explosions can be incredibly captivating to witness, but they can also have utterly devastating consequences, whether they are natural or man-made. Explosions end up with people losing their lives, property, or more. Join us as we reveal the 15 biggest explosions ever caught on camera. Enjoy the show, friends. Number 15. Bikini Atoll Explosion, Trouble in Paradise. Don't let the name fool you. Bikini Atoll is not a place where you would want to wear a bikini, or anything else for that matter. This remote island in the Marshall Islands was once a beautiful paradise, but it became a hellish nightmare in the late 1940s when the U.S. military conducted a series of devastating nuclear tests in this region. One of the most spectacular and horrifying tests was the Baker Test, which took place on July 25, 1946. The Baker Test was part of Operation Crossroads, a project to study the effects of nuclear weapons on naval vessels and equipment. The U.S. military assembled a fleet of 90 target ships, including old battleships, aircraft carriers, submarines, and destroyers, off Bikini Atoll. The bomb, nicknamed Helen of Bikini, was attached to the bottom of a landing ship and lowered to a depth of 27 meters. The bomb had an explosive yield of 3 kilotons, which is equivalent to 3,000 tons of TNT. The bomb detonated at 8:35 a.m., creating a colossal explosion that vaporized the landing ship and lifted a column of water as high as 2.5 Burj Khalifa towers, the tallest building in the world. The column of water collapsed, creating a huge crater and a massive wave that swept over the target ships. 9 ships were sunk by the wave, but the rest of them were even worse off. The explosion also released a large amount of radioactive material, which contaminated the water, the air, and the ships. The radiation was so intense that the ships became too dangerous to approach and had to be scuttled. The Baker Test was one of the biggest explosions caught on camera, and it showed the terrifying power and consequences of nuclear weapons. It also had a lasting impact on the environment, the people, and the culture of the Bikini Atoll. Number 14. Beirut Blast. One of the most devastating explosions in recent history occurred in the capital city of Lebanon, Beirut, on August 4, 2020. The origin of this cataclysmic blast was a gargantuan pile of 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, a highly volatile substance that had been languishing in a port warehouse for almost 7 years. The ammonium nitrate had arrived in Beirut on a freighter called Roses, which was en route from Georgia to Mozambique in 2013. However, the ship ran into some technical troubles and had to anchor at the Beirut port for a checkup. The Lebanese authorities confiscated the ship and its cargo for not paying the port dues and moved the ammonium nitrate to the warehouse. The warehouse was a ticking time bomb, as it lacked adequate safety precautions and ventilation. The authorities had been alerted several times about the looming danger of a fire or an explosion, but they did nothing to get rid of or dispose of the ammonium nitrate. The incompetence and corruption of the top officials resulted in a calamitous tragedy that could have been averted. On the fateful day, a fire erupted at the port, possibly due to welding work or fireworks. The fire set off the ammonium nitrate, creating a gigantic mushroom cloud that was visible from far away. The blast was equal to about 1.2 kilotons of TNT, making it one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions ever. The shockwave from the blast smashed windows, toppled buildings, and wrecked infrastructure all over the city. The blast claimed the lives of more than 200 people, wounded over 7,000, displaced about 300,000, and left around 80,000 children without a home. The blast also inflicted widespread environmental and economic damage, as it contaminated the air, water, and soil, and obliterated the main port of the country. The blast was felt as far as Cyprus, Turkey, and Israel, and was registered by seismographs across the globe. Now consider this for a moment. If you had the power to rewind time and prevent the disaster caused by the Beirut blast, what simple, everyday action would you suggest to defuse the ticking time bomb in that warehouse? Share your thoughts in the comments. With that said, let's keep the ball rolling. Number 13. Mother Nature's Wrath. Nothing can match the sheer force and fury of a volcanic eruption. Volcanoes can spew out enormous amounts of energy and material, creating stunning sights and horrific consequences. One of the most memorable and disastrous examples of a volcanic eruption in recent history is the one that took place at Mount St. Helens, a volcano situated in the Cascade Range in Washington State, USA. Mount St. Helens has a long and varied history of volcanic activity, going back to over 4,000 years ago. It has erupted in different manners, such as lava flows, ash falls, and pyroclastic flows. However, the most recent and most violent eruption occurred on May 18, 1980, after 123 years of quiescence. This eruption was extraordinary, as it did not erupt from the summit of the mountain, but from the flank, creating a colossal landslide and a sideways blast. The eruption unleashed about 24 megatons of thermal energy, which is equivalent to 8 times more energy than all the explosives used in World War II combined. The eruption also hurled about 0.7 cubic miles of rock, ash, and gas, forming a gigantic mushroom cloud that soared up to 80,000 feet in the air. The eruption obliterated about 230 square miles of forest, killed 57 people, and caused billions of dollars of damage. The eruption of Mount St. Helens was the first major volcanic event in the lower 48 states in generations. It was preceded by thousands of tremors and ash plumes, some as high as 16,000 feet, in the weeks leading up to the disaster. Number 12. Man-made earthquake. Pascal A and Pascal B of the Plum Bob experiment. You may think of Las Vegas as the city of lights, but did you know that there is another place nearby that has been lighting up the sky for decades? About 60 miles northwest of Vegas lies the notorious Nevada test site, where the U.S. military has been detonating nuclear bombs since 1951. Out of the 1021 tests they conducted, 100 were in the atmosphere and the rest were underground. The underground tests were supposed to be safer and more contained, but sometimes things went horribly wrong. That's what happened with the Pascal A experiment on July 26, 1957. The scientists at the test site dug a tunnel about 150 meters, 429 feet, deep and planted a tiny 29 kilograms, 65 pounds bomb inside. This bomb was equivalent to only 0.9 kilograms or 2 pounds of TNT, which is nothing compared to the massive nukes they usually used. The scientists expected the blast to be easily contained underground, but they were in for a rude awakening. The Pascal A experiment unleashed a whopping 55 tons of energy, which was a whopping 50,000 times more than what they had predicted. That's like expecting a firecracker and getting a volcano instead. The blast was so powerful that it created a huge crater on the surface and sent shockwaves across the desert. The military were stunned by the results and decided to try again with the Pascal B experiment on August 27, 1957. This time they added a twist. They put a 2-ton concrete plug on top of the hole, hoping to seal the blast inside. They also installed a high-speed camera to capture the plug's movement, thinking that it would fly away at a very high speed. The Pascal B experiment was even more spectacular than the first one. It produced a staggering 300 tons of energy and created a fireball that reached the sky. The concrete plug was launched into space at a mind-blowing speed of 41.75 miles, or 67.2 kilometers per second. That's 6 times faster than the escape velocity of the Earth, and faster than the Apollo 11 rocket that went to the moon 10 years later. The plug may have become the first man-made object to orbit the Earth, or it may have vaporized in the atmosphere. Either way, it was an incredible sight to behold. These 2 experiments were part of the Plum Bob series, which was the biggest and longest nuclear testing program in U.S. history. They were also the most controversial, as they exposed millions of people to radiation and caused many health problems. The Plum Bob series was a major factor in the creation of the Partial Test Ban Treaty. which banned atmospheric nuclear testing in 1963. The Pascal A and B experiments were not only the biggest explosions caught on camera, but also the most influential ones. Number 11. Fertilizer plant explosion in Texas. Sometimes the things that help us grow can also cause us to perish. That's what happened on April 17, 2013, in the quaint town of West, Texas. A fire erupted at the West Fertilizer Company, a facility that stored tons of ammonium nitrate, a highly combustible chemical used as a fertilizer. The fire soon reached the ammonium nitrate, triggering a colossal explosion that was heard up to 50 miles away. The blast was so intense that it caused a 2.1 magnitude earthquake and formed a mushroom cloud that towered over the town. The explosion claimed the lives of 15 people, including 12 heroic first responders who raced to the scene to battle the fire. More than 160 people were wounded, some severely, and hundreds of homes and buildings were wrecked or obliterated. The town was left in shambles, with many residents homeless and traumatized. The fertilizer plant explosion in Texas was one of the most shocking and tragic industrial accidents in recent history. It showed the dangers of storing large amounts of explosive materials in close proximity to populated areas. It also raised questions about the safety regulations and inspections of such facilities. Number 10. The first meteor. The first meteor that ever hit the Earth was not a natural phenomenon, but a man-made one. It was a weapon of mass destruction that altered the course of history. In 1945, the world was in the midst of the Second World War, a conflict that took millions of lives and caused unimaginable suffering. While the war in Europe was nearing its end, the war in Asia was still raging, with Japan resisting the Allied forces. The United States, hoping to end the war quickly and avoid a costly and bloody invasion of Japan, decided to use the atomic bomb, a new and terrifying weapon that had never been tested in combat. Little Boy was the name of the first atomic bomb, which contained about 140 pounds of enriched uranium. Its target was Hiroshima, a Japanese city that had a large military presence and was an important industrial center. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay flew over Hiroshima and dropped Little Boy at 8:15 a.m. The bomb exploded about 2,000 feet above the ground, creating a fireball that was brighter than the sun. The blast was equivalent to more than 15,000 tons of TNT, and it obliterated everything within a radius of 1 mile. A shockwave and a heat wave followed, causing more devastation and death. A mushroom cloud rose over the city, reaching a height of 40,000 feet. Little Boy killed at least 80,000 people instantly, and many more died later from radiation sickness and injuries. The bomb also left a lasting impact on the environment, the culture, and the psyche of the survivors. Little Boy was the first meteor that struck the Earth, and it marked the dawn of the nuclear age. Number 9. Pyrotechnical mishaps. It's one thing to make a mistake, but when it involves explosives, it could be your last. The people of Tultepec, a Mexican city, proudly call themselves the firework capital of Mexico. They have been making and selling fireworks for over 200 years, and they have a huge market for them. But on December 20th, 2016, something went terribly wrong at the San Pablito market. A spark from some open-air fireworks ignited a pile of gunpowder, setting off a chain reaction of continuous exploding fireworks. The scene was like a war zone, with flames, smoke, and debris flying everywhere. The massive explosion killed 40 people, injured more than 80, and destroyed the entire market, leaving only ashes behind. It was one of the worst firework accidents in history, and it shocked the whole country. 2 years later, the market was rebuilt, and the sellers promised to follow better safety rules and storage methods. However, the question remains, can we be sure that this will never happen again? Number 8. Tianjin explosion. China is known for its rapid economic growth and development, but sometimes this comes at a high cost. That's what happened on August 12, 2015, in the port city of Tianjin. where one of the deadliest industrial accidents in China unfolded. A chain of massive explosions ripped through a warehouse that stored hazardous chemicals, including about 800 tons of ammonium nitrate, a highly explosive substance used in fertilizers and explosives. The first two blasts were so powerful that they shook the ground and the air, with the second one being equivalent to 21 tons of TNT. The shockwave smashed windows and damaged buildings several kilometers away, and the fireball illuminated the night sky. The explosions set off more fires and explosions that lasted for days, creating a huge crater and destroying thousands of new cars parked nearby. The disaster claimed the lives of 173 people, mostly firefighters who were unaware of the danger and raced to the scene to extinguish the initial fire. Hundreds more were injured, some with severe burns and wounds. The explosions also caused environmental damage, as toxic chemicals leaked into the air, water, and soil. An investigation found that the warehouse violated safety regulations and stored excessive amounts of dangerous materials. The Tianjin explosion was a tragic event that exposed the flaws and risks of China's rapid industrialization and urbanization. Number 7. Chocolate factory explosion. You may have seen or tasted the sweet treats made by R.M. Palmer Company, a chocolate novelty company that specializes in seasonal products for Easter, Christmas, and Valentine's Day. They have been in business since 1948, but in March 2023, one of their chocolate factories faced a bitter tragedy. Just before 5 a.m., a massive explosion ripped apart one building and pushed another back 4 feet. A weather camera from a local station captured the moment of the blast. The explosion was caused by a gas leak that ignited and fueled fires that caused even more damage. The disaster claimed the lives of 7 people and injured 10 others, and the cause of the gas leak is still under investigation. The explosion also destroyed tons of chocolate and candy, creating a scene that looked like a twisted version of Willy Wonka's factory. The chocolate factory explosion was a shocking and sad event that affected the workers, the customers, and the community. Number 6. Trinity Blast, the first atom bomb in history. The Trinity Blast was a monumental event that changed the course of history. It was the first ever detonation of an atom bomb, a devastating weapon of mass destruction. The bomb, nicknamed the Gadget, was the result of the secretive and massive Manhattan Project, which involved thousands of brilliant minds working in different locations across the U.S. Their goal was to beat Nazi Germany and Japan in the race to create a nuclear weapon. The bomb exploded with a whooping force of about 20 kilotons of TNT at the Trinity site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, in 1945. The project leader, J. Robert Oppenheimer, later recalled that he thought of a chilling verse from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, as he witnessed the blast, "I am becoming death, the destroyer of worlds." The Trinity Blast marked the dawn of the nuclear age, which ended World War II and brought about decades of tension and dread of nuclear war. Scientists recently discovered that civilians in New Mexico may have been exposed to thousands of times the recommended level of public radiation. Number 5. Halifax explosion. The Halifax explosion was a catastrophic and heartbreaking event that rocked the world in 1917, during the height of World War I. It occurred when a French cargo ship, the SS Mont Blanc, loaded with a colossal amount of explosives for the war effort, accidentally smashed into a Belgian ship, the SS Imo, in the cramped harbor of Halifax, Canada. The collision set off the explosives on board the Mont Blanc, unleashing a mind-boggling explosion that surpassed any man-made explosion before it. The explosion was equivalent to roughly 3 kilotons of TNT, and it generated a powerful shockwave that obliterated windows and buildings for miles around. The blast also spewed a towering white plume of smoke and debris 20,000 feet, 6,100 meters, above the city, and sparked a ravaging tsunami that surged up as high as 60 feet, 18 meters, along the coast. The explosion caused total annihilation for nearly 1.2 miles, 2 kilometers, surrounding the blast center, and claimed the lives of about 2,000 people and wounded 9,000 more. It remains the world's largest artificial accidental explosion to this day. A grease fire. The Piper Alpha platform in the North Sea was the scene of a horrifying and deadly disaster in 1988. A series of explosions tore through the oil rig late at night, turning it into a raging inferno that lasted for hours. Most of the oil rig modules collapsed into the sea, killing 167 men and injuring and traumatizing many more. It was the world's biggest offshore oil disaster, affecting 10% of UK oil production and causing financial losses of an astonishing £2 billion, which is equivalent to $5 billion today. The disaster started when a condensate pump tripped on the oil platform, sparking an explosion. This triggered a chain reaction of other gas compressors tripping, pipelines rupturing, and explosions multiplying. Flames from the broken gas and oil lines reached heights of 200 meters and consumed energy at a rate 3 times that of the UK's total energy consumption. The cause of death for the victims was either smoke inhalation, drowning, or injuries. 30 bodies were never found. Number 3. Tessenderlo disaster. Imagine a factory that produces chemicals blowing up with such a force that it leaves a massive crater and kills hundreds of people. That's exactly what happened on a fateful Wednesday in 1942, when the town of Tessenderlo in Belgium was rocked by a catastrophic explosion. The cause of the blast was a reckless attempt to break up huge chunks of ammonium nitrate, a highly explosive substance, using dynamite. The result was a devastating fireball that wiped out the entire factory, a nearby school, and many homes. The death toll was 189, with 60 of them being innocent school children. More than 900 people were injured by the flying debris and shockwave. The Tessenderlo disaster was one of the worst industrial accidents in history. Number 2. 2008 Gerdek explosions. What happens when you try to dispose of hundreds of tons of old ammunition in a former military depot? You get a colossal blast that shakes the whole country and beyond. That's what occurred on a Saturday in 2008, when a US-Albanian team was working on a demilitarization project in Gerdek, Albania. A fire ignited the propellant containers, creating a massive explosion that could be heard as far as Skopje, Macedonia. The inferno lasted for hours, sending shockwaves and debris across the area. The damage was staggering. 26 people killed, over 300 houses destroyed, and hundreds of buildings damaged. The 2008 Gerdek explosions were a tragic example of how dangerous munitions can be, even when they are supposed to be harmless. Number 1. Bhopal disaster. It was a night of horror and tragedy in Bhopal, India, when a deadly gas leaked from a chemical plant and engulfed the city in a toxic cloud. The gas was methyl isocyanate, a highly poisonous substance that causes severe damage to the lungs, eyes, and skin. The leak happened on December 3, 1984, and within hours, thousands of people were dead and hundreds of thousands were injured. The gas also killed animals and plants, leaving behind a wasteland of corpses and misery. The Bhopal disaster was the worst industrial accident in history, with a death toll of up to 20,000 and a legacy of suffering and injustice. How could such a catastrophe happen, and who was responsible for it? Friends, thanks for watching. For a more mind-blowing revelation, check out the next video that pops on your screen. You'll be stunned.